We're going to do models in Angular. So far we've done, so we're talking about two-way data binding. Two-way data binding. So the two ways you can go are from JavaScript to HTML, which is what we just did with all of our controller logic. And now we're going to cover doing it the other way around. So from HTML now, we want to bind that directly to JavaScript. So that's what ngModel is going to do. So this is handled by that curly brace syntax. So like little handlebars. This guy is going to be covered by a directive that looks like ngModel. This ngModel right here with the HTML JavaScript binding is how Angular does forms. So we do AJAX submissions with forms like login and registration. This is what we're going to be using. So we're going to run through, as an example, the front end for, let's do a registration, so we can do some logic too. So we'll do a registration. So we'll have a form that has email, password, and a confirmed password. And then we'll create a fake AJAX request that sends that form up to a login route. So that's what we're going to create. So I'll create another application here. That's it. Registration Angular. Your directory, cd into it. Same deal, create your index.html. Directories for JS. Controllers. I'm not going to include CSS on this one. I'm just going to leave it out. Controllers. These are the files you should have. -P is create any subdirectories. So create any directories needed to get to a path. So normally if I did mkdir.js controllers, it would say folder JS does not exist, cannot create JS controllers. If you do -P, it'll create JS instead. So it's to create multiple folders in the string. Okay. Let's sublime this. Another thing I'm going to do to make this a little faster is I'm going to copy in. So is it the museum Angular? I'm going to copy in the index.html from there just to speed things up. Oops. To index.html. So copy in this guy. You guys can just go into your file and copy paste if you want. Museum Angular. Whatever you have for the museum page, oops. Here, and then just delete any of the divs. So we just have this part right here. I'll change this to registration controller.js. So basically get your file to this point right here. Once you're here to this point, And once you're here to this point, change the app name in ng app to registration. Title registration. And then in the app.js, create your module, angular.module, registration with no dependencies. Okay. Set this one up, angular.module. So the name is registration. Dot controller, registration controller, registration controller. Function registration controller. Okay, so we're done with the basic setup we need to get everything going. Actually, sorry, there's one more. We've got to create the div for registration controller. I'm just call it as reg. I don't feel like writing out registration every time. So I'll create the div I need to start doing my HTML. Okay, in order to do this, in order to do the registration, we need three fields. So we're going to be creating HTML fields for this, but we need email, password, and confirm password. So for the initial portion, we set it up exactly like we would for the JS to HTML style, where we create the models we need, or create the variables we need, except we're going to set them to empty values to start, and we're going to have the user input the values. So that's going to take in user input and then do something with the values. So with these three, for each of these, we're going to create an input field. So input ng models, this is where the binding comes in, equals reg.email. So I'll do okay, and that's how you set up the binding. That's all there is to it. So this will now, whenever you type anything into that input field, I guess I'll make this type equals email. Type equals email. Anytime you type anything into that input field now, it's going to automatically update the value of the variable as well. And that's what ngModel does for you. We'll see here in a second how that works. So what we're going to do before we actually build the form is we're going to just use this email value right here. The email ngModel is going to update the controller this.email. And then just for fun here, not for fun, but just for like debugging purposes, we're going to print out the value of reg.email right here. So what we're going to see happening is, as we type the values into the input field with the ng model is automatically going to update reg.email. So this .email, and then as that automatically updates, the controller will then tell this portion right here, hey, I've received updated values from email, so it's going to output out the value of the email as you type it out. So if that's not clear, I'll just pull it up on a page and you'll see real quick. Open in browser. Zoom this guy in. So as I'm typing this out, nothing happens. Why? Why is nothing happening? Div reg.email. Reg. ng-app. Anybody getting anything working? Okay. Oh, there we go. I don't know why that took so long. Oh, is that screwing it up? Oh, it won't show up until it's an actual email? Oh. Alright, I'm going to get rid of the type equals email then. Screw that. Okay, yeah, so the type equals email prevents it from actually validating until the type is actually email. I don't feel like dealing with that. I want to see it actually updated. So you can see as you type, the field updates as well. So whatever you type into here automatically gets updated both in the JavaScript, and since the JavaScript is binding to the front end as well now. So how that goes. You got the input, you got the controller, and you've got our div that's outputting it. The input through ng model updates the controller. This is the first direction of the data line. This is and the controller through the end of our syntax updates the div. So that's the first way we saw earlier. Now this is the second way. So there's two-way data binding current. Anybody confused? This one?
I guess how is that two-way?
The first direction is from. So this input doesn't directly change the email. The special email. The input changes the JavaScript variable. The JavaScript variable changes the HTML. The controller uses the JavaScript variable to change the HTML. So the two ways from HTML to JavaScript. Yeah, both of them. And that's what we're going to be doing for the password and confirm password as well. So I'm going to get rid of this right now. We've seen it works. And I'm going to do password input ng model equals reg.password. And then confirm password input ng model equals reg.confirm password. And it's kind of strange. We've never seen this before, where the variable name goes inside of quotes. We're used to quotes denoting strings, but in Angular's version of HTML, quotes actually contain Angular code a lot of times. So something that we just have to get used to. In the ng model, whatever we see inside here is actually going to be a variable name, not a string. also going to include a submit button. Button submit. Let's register, I guess. And I'm going to introduce a new directive here called ng-click. So we've seen document.eventListener in JavaScript. We've seen selector.click in jQuery. There's a third way with Angular now to bind click actions, and that's with the ng-click directive. So what it says is, it's similar to using the onClick in JavaScript. You've seen that button onClick and you execute a function. It's the same thing, it's ng-click. This is the way you do event bindings in Angular. It's directly into the HTML. So ng-click equals reg.submit parentheses, and then we would have an actual function here called this.submit that would be executed when the click action occurs. So when the click action occurs, again, this is JavaScript now. It's not a string. It's actually valid JavaScript. You're saying go to the registration controller, find the submit function, and execute it. If the submit function were to take a parameter, let's say were to take the email as a parameter, you could throw an argument into here where you'd be like that. So if you want to use quotes inside of this string right here, or inside of this ng-click, you would use single quotes instead of double quotes, because the double quotes is reserved for the actual block of text itself. So this is how you would do strings inside of a function. For now, we're not going to get too confusing with that. We're just going to call this .submit on the button click. So when we click the button, whatever code goes into here is going to execute. Right, I'm going to pause for a second, make sure I don't have any errors. It's the email, password, confirm password, no errors. Looks like it's good to go. Let me console log something here. Submit to make sure this executes when I click the button. When I hit register, you can see submit comes up. So I can see that the binding is working properly. Okay, anybody not get the submit thing to show up? Good? Alright. So we're going to put our actual form logic into here. But in order to do so, we're going to have to pause for a second and go over Angular services. So Angular has, on top of all this directives and all this custom stuff, Angular has a bunch of built-in services that Dan's going to go over tomorrow. Angular services. So if you look up Angular built-in services, you'll get this giant list of services that are available to you. It's not too important what these are. These are the extensible modules that I was talking about. There's a few ones that you actually need to include a separate file for, but there's a ton that are just built into the main Angular file itself. And in order to use them, you have to call registration controller. So whatever the name of this function is right here, you have to inject it into that function. So .inject equals, and then the name of the service that you want to use. This is a pretty confusing part right here. The reason you have to inject it is that Angular requires all dependencies for any controllers, for any modules, for any portion of the application. It requires any dependencies to be explicitly defined in the file. So you have to inject the dependency into the controller. You can't just use $HTTP in the controller. And once you inject it into the controller, it then becomes available to you as the first argument right here. So once you inject it, $HTTP becomes the first argument passed to registration control. And this is pretty much where Angular starts getting confusing and loses people. But this is like a design decision people made when they made Angular to make dependency injection be standard. The reason was it's supposed to be easier to test code when you do it this way. But for the most part, it just caused a lot of confusion. So that's that. But we can use it. So $HTTP is Ajax. It's Angular's version of the $.ajax function. So just like we had $.post, we can do HTTP.post. And we can use this with a made-up URL that doesn't actually exist right now. Register. And you can pass in form data. So in order to use that, we're going to have to do this right here. Anybody know why we have to include that line? Or self equals this? No? This is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. We've gone over this before. It refers to the current context. Inside of the HTTP post, the context is going to be different than inside the controller. So if I were to do this.email right here, instead of getting this.email, so instead of getting this value right here, whatever the input field is equal to, I'll get some other random value out, probably undefined. So in order to correct that, we have to store a pointer to this. So pointer to the outer context using self. And self will point to the outer context. And then we can call self.email and know that self is going to refer to the controller's email and not to some undefined variable. So it's email, self.email, and then the password and the confirm password. So what this will do is, when you click the button now, the submit function will execute. So the moment the submit function executes, it will send a post request to your /registered backend route with the JSON data, email, password, and confirm password. So this is really similar to the route you guys must have set up to do registration in projects 2 and 3. We have email, password, and confirm password being sent. Except now we're doing it through Angular instead of through jQuery and Ajax. And if we want to make, let's not bother with that. Okay, so that's ng model. Any questions on this? Wonderful. We're going to do a lab based off of this, but I don't think anybody gets this yet. So we're going to do one walkthrough on top of this. So right now we have registration controller as reg. Try and do the same thing, but create a login controller. So create a login controller that'll create the post request you need to log in instead of just register. So you're going to have to include a file for login controller. You're going to have to set the file up. You're going to have to walk through all these steps in order to set up your input fields, set up your variables, and post the data to a login route. So try and do that. And we'll see what errors you guys run into. Yeah, I got rid of it. If you put it back in, you want me to put it back in? See? Doesn't matter. No. That's just one way of debugging is to print out your variable names and see what they come to.
Also, you can keep it there.
Yeah.
So to create a new module.
No.
What's going on? What's going on here? This is messed up, bro. Jesus, man. What is wrong with you today, dude? Oh, dude, come on, dollar sign. Oh. Oh, I'm here too, dude. Come on. Damn, bro, what's going on here? Where's that line? Man, get the fuck out. What's this? Come on, bro. Oh,
I was trying to get
oh my God, I hate this. Oh, now you're
syntax, man.
what's wrong with you? We're gonna make up, bro. Okay, so
Oh, look at this, bro.
come on, dude.
Okay. You good? Yeah, alright. Cool. So login controller. I'm not going to set up a separate file for this, just to show you guys how to do it on the same file, since you guys all got the answer already anyways with separate files. So if you want, you can do multiple controllers on the same file. Login controller.inject. And login controller. Okay. Email and password is the same thing. Copy that in. Self equals this. Submit's going to be the same thing. But I'm going to change post. No, I just did this on my own. You don't need to do this part. So register to login. I don't need confirm password. So that's my login controller. And then in my login controller, I have two fields. Email, input ng model equals login.email. And password, close this now. Input ng model. Well, first I'd probably do type equals password if I was doing it for real. ng model equals login, no password. Okay. And I need a submit button. Yeah. Alright. Button ng click equals login dot submit. Login. Okay. So I can do a login. And this will send an HTTP request that can't actually be sent, and you'll get an error. And Ezra's going to go over tomorrow how to actually make those HTTP requests work with the backend. We're not going to get into it today. Instead, we're going to take, it'll take like a 5-minute break right now. We're going to come back and we're going to do a calculator lab. So you guys can use ng model to build a calculator, but you're not going to actually do any DOM manipulations on your own. You're just going to set up all the ng models and have the calculator calculate for you. So, see how that works.